Episode 58. I'm back. And a day late. A week and a day late. But, sometimes life gets in the way. So here we go. Today's episode is brought to you by biowave.com. What is BioWave, you may ask? Well, I'm glad that you did. What is it? Well, before I get into what it is, let's talk about pain. If you're like me, pain sucks. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. So achieving or getting on a path to becoming pain-free, it's a good thing. So what is BioWave? It is a life-changing, non-opioid, effective way to block chronic or acute pain. 85% of people who use BioWave experience a significant reduction in pain from just one 30-minute treatment. It's proven effective over 15 years. It's used by more than 60 VAs, veteran administrations, or probably they're talking about hospitals, active military, and most NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball teams. It's VA recognized, VA prescribed, FDA cleared, and it's made here in America. If you're listening to this and you are a veteran or active duty military or someone you know or love needs some safe, non-opioid, but effective technology to help managing their pain, go to biowave, biowave.com and learn how you can get treatment at no cost. Also on biowave.com, amazing testimonials from veterans and active duty military. It's designed to block pain at the source and probably is going to be like nothing you've ever tried before. biowave.com, biowave.com. Talked about it on my last episode. There's a ton of information there. Go check it out. This episode is also brought to you by Onnit, a longtime supporter of the podcast. They are launching something new. It is called Onnit 6 Kettlebell. Now, there's a variety of fitness programs out there. I've spoken about some of them before, and I'm going to speak about some of them again in the future. So does this sound like you? You sick of going to the gym? Or maybe you just don't like getting all your stuff ready and then heading off to the gym and carving out that time. So I personally am looking for something that I can squeeze in, work out anytime, anywhere, with limited equipment. So what is the Onnit 6 Kettlebell program? Over the next 6 weeks, it is designed to essentially transform your body right in front of your eyes. It's going to help you lose fat. You're going to see muscle gain and develop. And hopefully it's going to help you move better, right? So in addition to strength and conditioning, some mobility. And you're going to be able to do that using minimal gear. And by that I mean 2 or 3 kettlebells. If you have a room dedicated to watching TV or videos and you have a phone, you have enough space to stretch. You have enough space to use your kettlebells, so you're fully equipped and ready to rock with the Onnit 6 program. You don't need a wall rack of dumbbells. You don't need bands or a suspension trainer. You don't need a pull-up bar. You can do this anywhere, and hopefully you have those kettlebells with you too. If you want to check it out, what you need to do is go to onnit.com/6, the spelling of the number 6, S-I-X, and do your best to follow the instructions. Like I said, the workouts are designed to help you lose weight, build muscle, move better, and feel better. In addition to the Onnit 6 program, which can actually be found if you go to the landing page for Cleared Hot, which is onnit.com/hot, you're actually going to see the Onnit 6 bodyweight and the very top. So you can check that out, or you can check out a variety of other supplementation ideas. Right now, I've been crushing myself and my wife have been crushing the Total Human. She is loving them in both the daytime and the nighttime. Specifically, she's been talking about how it's helping her sleep. One of my daily go-tos at the bottom of the page actually is the Onnit MCT oil. I got the vanilla flavor as well. Actually, they have the coconut one showing, but I got the vanilla one. I will mix this thing at nighttime, a little MCT oil and Alpha Brain Instant, which you can find under supplements. And I have crazy dreams. But I also put the MCT oil in my coffee in the morning. So those are daily. And then on days that I just want to focus on, or actually hopefully enhance my focus, I've been taking the Alpha Brain Instant, which is a powder, a single serving powder, but I also have great experience with the pills as well. So check it out, onnit.com/hot. Now, on to the episode. What do I have for you today? Today I have an episode with my father. And you can probably tell we're related with the guest name on the podcast description. I did an episode with him and my brother-in-law. It was a Q&A that I was going to do by myself, but they happened to be in town, and I thought, why not combine heads in multiple generations and get some answers? And he is back here in Montana. We were doing a week of bow hunting, and I tried to carve out some time to sit down and talk with him, specifically a little bit about kind of the lineage of our family, where we come from, how we landed where I grew up, and then talk about the military service on both sides of my family, my mom's side of the house and my dad's side of the house. So multiple generations. And then ended with talking about, being a parent to somebody who is serving in the military, because I'm hopefully going to be able to tie this into an episode. I know people reach out every time I talk about having my wife on. I'm still trying to get her on because she can speak from the perspective of being a spouse. My dad can speak from the perspective of being a parent, of having somebody in the military, and his own experiences in the military and in the Vietnam War. So without any other chit-chat from me, Cleared Hot, episode number 58. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Oh my God, it feels good out here in the sun.
Oh, doesn't it?
This morning, we were, the classic, you should try to walk and not sweat. We sweat a little bit.
Yeah.
I just needed to hear the city boys huff and puff a little bit behind me.
Well, you're used to the elevation,
Oh, it's not that high.
Yeah, and but where'd you guys go? Probably 1,000 foot.
I think at the peak Jason actually asked me that question. I was looking at the topo map. I think somewhere between 900 and 1,000 above that one field that we were focusing on.
The marsh.
Yeah, the marsh type area. It was cool. Definitely. I mean, the fall colors have made it different.
It is. It's spectacular. I mean, it's a palette of colors, which is really cool.
Yeah, I was laying by the lake because I'm a fan of being efficient with my energy expenditure. Kyle had his cooking suite out.
His what?
It's just a chair.
Oh yeah. Yeah. His chair. Yeah.
So I just tell him to pack his cooking suite when it's time to leave, and he just shakes his head. But
did you see his call?
Oh yeah.
That I asked him. I said, "Looks like the Horn of Plenty."
The best thing he could do with that call would be to try to put it back into the packaging and just put it back in his bag, because I can't call, so I know better than to call.
I told him, I said it might be a good bong, but other than that, I don't know what you would want to use it for.
Oh man. So I wanted to talk about some military stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm cautiously optimistic that I can get Jaime to sit down one day and talk.
Yeah.
I've talked with her about doing it, and it's a little bit of a fluctuation. She'll go between semi-enthusiastic to absolutely against it, depending on the day.
Yeah.
And I think it would be amazing to talk to her, because I can only talk from my perspective. I can only talk from the person. I mean, I only can explain the TV screen that I saw with my own eyes.
Yeah.
And I actually have been, since I have mentioned before trying to get her on, I've had quite a few spouses reach out, and I don't want to say begging, because that's not what it was, but pleading or really enthusiastically asking to get her on, because she could talk about it from a perspective that I think is lost.
Well, I just listened. I was just listening to the introduction to the one about military questions.
Yeah.
And if one thing you could do different was how you would handle with your family. And I think that was such an insightful comment. And it's such an accurate one that so many men don't take the time to even realize, especially at a professional level, that you were, and all of the things that, that was your lifestyle. I mean, you operated at such a high level that if you didn't do that, you were putting yourself at risk.
It's easy to say that. Looking back objectively, there are things that I could have done while still operating at that high level that would have reprioritized. But I will say the most common thing you'll hear from guys, the most common thing I have heard, I don't want to make a blanket statement, the most common thing I have heard from guys who are choosing to prioritize elsewhere is that reasoning or excuse, however you want to call it, because it's seductive to say that, because it's easy. Because who's going to really push? I could die. Who's going to push back against you? Because it is true, but there's also latitude in there, I think, for...
Well, it was such an intense time. I mean, once 9/11 happened, I mean, it was, balls to the wall. I mean, you just went flat out. I mean, there was time before when you were going to the Philippines, you were going to Thailand and places like that. Yeah, it was fun. But there was just, I mean, when that 9/11 happened, it changed the world in so many different ways.
Yeah. Well, and specifically on the military side of the house. So I actually, because I get asked pretty often about not the military legacy of our family, but the military history.
Sure.
Because it's from both sides of the house, but you could probably explain it better than me. So let's start with mom's side of the house. How far back does it go, and in what branch?
It was the only insight. Well, I take it back. Her dad, who I never met, was in the cavalry. And the way I understand...
Whose dad?
Beaver's dad.
Okay. So that would be my great-great-grandfather.
Okay. And I'm not sure whether it was in the National Guard or the Army Reserve, but he was in when they was still part of the cavalry. And the stories I've heard from Beaver, if I've got them correct, was he joined the military and ended up in supply. He was a supply person, and served in Korea. While they were in Korea, he was in Korea. The entire family moved to Taiwan, spent 2 years in Taiwan. Donna, her mom's mom, your grandma, went into nursing school at a very young age.
On the Navy side, right?
On the Navy side. And was part of the first detachment of Navy nurses that went to the South Pacific, dealing with these Marine Corps veterans and Army veterans coming off of Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima. And I had the insight of one of her really dear friends who was her commanding officer during that period of time. They were great old drinking buddies. And but to make a long story short, it was so intense, the psychological damage that was happening to those guys. And Donna was she was a young woman. It fried her, and she got a military discharge.
And she was enlisted at that time, right?
She was an officer.
In the Navy?
In the Navy nurse. And then the time frame, I'm not sure, but she went back in the military, this time the Army.
Did she have to lie to get back in?
I don't know. There's some real mysteries with all of this.
Because there are some disqualifying factors, as you and I experienced on my first attempt to join the Navy.
Yeah. But, and she became an Army nurse, and that's where she met Beaver.
Yep.
And
what was his real name again?
Bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you'd put $1 million on this table, I couldn't have guessed that.
And unfortunately, he got caught up in the reduction of the military service after Korea, and he never got above major. So he timed out. He timed out, and he became an insurance adjuster. And you would go into his garage. And you could not open the door, but you would go down aisles, and everything from tape measures to pencils all had their own little serial code on it. I mean, I think I gave you a tape measure.
You did, yeah. It's serialized.
I mean, it was so incredible. I mean, I came from a very, male-oriented.
Oh, we're going there next.
Yeah. But what I mean is then meeting, and my parents didn't drink. And Beaver and Gog did, and at 5 o'clock every night it was cocktail hour, and Beaver started sneaking me into the garage and have a little toddy.
I have a suspicion that they might have fluffed the 5 o'clock hour from time to time.
Ooh, it was it was part of what plagued that family and all those daughters afterwards. They've at one form or another have gone for help. Mom was the first. She got involved in Al-Anon, in the 70s. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what she was going through. I mean, none of us were dysfunctional, right? But so watching that whole process, and it was something, especially for Mom, who was the oldest daughter, oldest daughter, and typically in an alcoholic family, the oldest daughter becomes the parents.
Yeah.
And she took,
or just probably the oldest child in general.
Oldest child, yes, in general, whether it's a daughter or son. So that was interesting. It was something that Mom worked really hard at, and it was a blessing at the end to see Gog triumph over that disability, and it was very, very interesting. We developed a great relationship. I had Mom in the hospital in San Jose. I had Gog in the hospital in Santa Cruz. She's literally dying. She knew what was going on. I'd go spend all day with Mom, and I'd go back at night, and I'd spend most of the night with Gog. And the first thing she would say when I would walk in, she says, "I'm still here." Just a spirit that was so typical of those World War II Depression people that, they had starts in their shorts that it's missing today. They have no reference of not having anything, but those people lived it.
Yeah.
When
Mom and when did Beaver and Gog separate from the military? Because was Mom born while they were both in, or where did they come along?
They separated around 1991. 1961, 62. Ended up, I believe he was stationed like in Sunnyvale or someplace like that, and they spent a year there. And they lived 4 years in Washington D.C., 4 years in Selma, Alabama. The stories that Mom would tell me about civil rights scene, a drinking fountain was said colored for coloreds.
Yeah.
Where's the colored water? Not realizing it was for people of color. It was, and then living 2 years in Taiwan. I think her 7th and 8th grade. Thank God for me, her ability to pack up and move kept us together forever. She had the adventurous spirit that I did, and
so she grew up a military brat.
She was a military brat,
okay.
Living on the base housing. You got the brats riding their bicycles all over the base, getting into trouble.
I think you mean the street gangs.
Yeah. The parents. Their parents are at the O Club at the,
Yeah. And then on our side of the house, your side of the house, because when I say our side of the house, I technically count on both of those. On the Stumpf side of the house, how far back does the military service go?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm real sketchy on exactly what generation the Stumpfs migrated from Germany to the United States. It goes back, as far as I can tell, Grandpa Chip, your great-grandfather.
Yep.
He
was the founder of the construction company, right?
Yeah. We'll get to that. But he was too young for the World War I.
Okay.
And then with World War II, the best recollection, I have heard nothing about military before that in the United States. I kind of heard whisper something about, in Europe or what have you, but it was just fleeting at best. But but Clarence, my dad, your grandpa, he
and his brother too, right? Both Navy.
Donnie, Chip's dad, both through the Navy. Clarence was World War II. Donnie was Korean War.
Okay.
And then me in Vietnam, you Afghanistan, Iraq.
Yep.
Kyle.
Yep.
Yeah, all Navy. It's all Navy.
Yeah, so there's definitely a history there on both sides.
Yeah, it really was. I've got some of my earliest pictures are there with my dad with his white cap, and I'm wearing it, and he's standing there, in his uniform when his brother was home from Korea, and they're both in their uniforms, and the pride that you can see in that picture with my grandparents and their sons was as with parents, it's easy to be proud of your kids.
So how did we land in Santa Cruz? because it's not traditionally known for military bases.
It had nothing to do about military. It was They were in Springfield, Ohio. My grandfather, Grandpa Chip, his dad was he was a brainiac, was a math person who was teaching, I believe, at one of the universities there. Got killed by a trolley car, got hit by a trolley car. And Grandpa Chip, your great-grandpa, had to quit school, was like a sophomore, and went to work for a brewing company.
In high school or college?
High school.
Okay.
And went to work for a brewing company and became a master machinist. He could fix anything. And, the expansion was move west. There was work happening. And especially with all that was happened on the West Coast with the shipyards and the aviation in San Diego and Los Angeles, they moved to. Grandpa Chip's oldest brother was Uncle Ted. He moved here first. His brother followed him. Uncle Ted started Santa Cruz Masonry, and Grandpa Chip, because of his machinist background, opened up gas stations. That's what he was doing, but he was a little too fond of the toddy, and
so we got a little bit on our side of the house as well. Perfect.
Yeah, and he was just an absolute failure as a business person. And my father quit school in the 7th grade and went and literally ran the
gas stations?
The gas stations. They were going to Brantford Junior High School, right around the corner from where I live now.
Yeah.
And they then started building in Santa Cruz the cement plant up in Davenport, and they needed machinists to put all the equipment together. They shut down the gas stations, and Grandpa Chip went up there as a master machinist, and Clarence went with him as a helper. And then World War II broke out. Grandpa Chip then went to the Mare Island shipyards where they were building ship a day. And he, again, was an apprentice there. As soon as he turned 17, he enlisted in the Navy and was gone.
Wow. And then came back to Santa Cruz when his time was over?
He came back to Santa Cruz because the family was there. And that's an interesting. I had never thought of this. What Grandpa Chip had done after World War II. It's a real mystery. I had never really thought of that. Maybe he was still working as a machinist somewhere. I don't know. But Clarence came home, and he was working at night in a bakery shop. And during the day, he was learning the masonry trade from his uncle, Grandpa's brother. And we were living in a 12-foot trailer. I mean, their money was tighter than you could even imagine. We had nothing, absolutely nothing. And I can still remember that trailer. I think it's like 2 years old. I can still picture it. But my dad was an artist with his hands, and what he could create, and he became so good at it, and he couldn't get his uncle to pay him anymore, even though he was out producing the other masons. So my Grandpa Chip, his father, with his math ability, went to Sacramento, took the general contracting test, passed it, and they opened up the construction business.
Okay.
Grandpa Chip basically did the accounting horribly. He was still down at the pub,
Yeah.
but he would take off the plans, do the the material lists and all of that stuff, because he was a genius. The man was incredible. In those days, we didn't have the computers or what have you. You had the tabletop adding machines, and I've seen him do this more than once. He could add the figures in his head faster than you could do them on.
Yeah.
And have it right.
So he was truly gifted when it came to math.
Yeah, he just was gifted with that and toddy.
I was going to say he couldn't combine the two. He couldn't do math and cocktails.
But he eventually, I guess got from the story I got is he had a little too much toddy one night and flushed his false teeth down the toilet, and that's the last time he drank. Sweetest man in the world. I mean, I miss him so much. I mean, we're up here hunting, and I often think of those times when, I would go with my grandpa Chip. I would be 16 years old maybe, and he was, then he was, I think, in his mid 60s, and to me it was ancient. Now we're up here. You're in your 40s. I'm in my 70s.
Yeah.
So
I'm almost still emotionally 14. So it's fine.
Well, we all are.
Yeah.
But, so that's kind of how that happened. And so with the business, just small stuff. They started making. There was not a tremendous amount of growth in Santa Cruz, but there was growth happening. And Korean War happened. My dad's brother, Donnie, was going to Hartnell Junior College. He wanted to be a pharmacist. And went to Korea, did that whole thing, came back, and went right into the war. Right into the masonry business. And it was a very extremely successful business. When I was growing up and working in the business as a young man, we consumed more masonry product than every other masonry company in Santa Cruz in totality.
Combined.
Yeah, there was like 4 or 5, and we were hard-working fools. Again, these were depression, people.
Yeah.
And you work 7 days a week, and it was the only time I ever saw my dad go away to do something was when we would go hunt. And but they were great times. It's kids don't see that today. A lot of unfortunate families do because there's a lot of poverty out there, but there's not an awful lot of opportunity for them either. So it's a tough rub.
What? So we'll probably you'll have to hypothesize on this one a little bit, given that most of the people that we've been talking about are gone now.
Yep.
What were Beaver and Gog's thoughts on military service in time of war? What impact?
The bar was open and everything was good.
Yeah, but
they were very patriotic. Everyone was very patriotic. This World War II was literally a world war. And Korea was, there was this philosophy. It was called the domino theory or what have you, and it was so close with Korea and China. And we had dropped 2 nuclear weapons, atomic weapons, and it was just, General MacArthur didn't want to stop the Second World War. He said we might as well fight the Russians now, So we ended up fighting the communists, but they were the Chinese communists, and it was just brutal. We were literally handed our asses, and it was. We were on the brink of being pushed into the South China Sea, and but we turned it around, as we always have, and but they were very patriotic.
Do you think they would have wanted? Obviously Casey did serve in a. What was her title though? And it was a religious capacity. I'm trying to think.
Okay,
chaplain.
She was a chaplain. She was Navy. They were very, very proud. It was an officer. I can remember sitting next to Gog when you graduated from Buds. She was sitting there squeezing my hand, and Gog never held my hand, but she was so, we all were obviously, but and like a lot of people of that generation, they struggled showing their feelings. You didn't talk about it. It was just, but I didn't know if I was going to have any knuckles left.
Well, how about on our side? Donnie and Clarence, what were their thoughts when you wanted to enlist? How did it?
It was just something we did.
Yeah.
It was just something we did. I had graduated from high school by the skin of my teeth.
I'm familiar with that feels like.
Yeah. And I went to Cabrillo College for a year, played football and baseball. I really didn't attend classes because as soon as I went up to the Naval Reserve Center, joined the Navy, got my early entry, And as soon as baseball season was over, school year wasn't over, but I was gone.
Yeah.
And, in those days you went to 90 days of naval boot camp, which was a joke. I mean, good God.
It's a thing.
Yeah, it is. It's a rite of passage that we talked about before. But no, it's tremendous amount of pride in our family. Yeah, I know one of the struggles my father and I had horribly is when I came home from the war and having seen firsthand how it was horribly being mismanaged.
You're talking about Vietnam, right?
Vietnam.
Yep, so we'll make sure.
And how it was being misrepresented in the past. I mean, literally people being lied to, and I became active in demonstrating against the war, not against the veterans. I mean, I visited VA hospitals. I did anything I could, but I was dramatically opposed to the war. It really created I don't know if we ever healed that wedge. Because in those generations, you never questioned the government. It was, you had the Depression, you had the New Deal with FDR, brought us out of it. A lot of people disagree that a lot of the policies created to a lot of the socialism that we have today, but we needed that to get people back on their feet. And so you just didn't do that kind of thing. And it wasn't that I was demonstrating against the country. It was just the people who were running it at that time. I mean, McNamara, who put it all together, wrote a book about 10 years ago, who literally sat down and apologized to all the veterans saying, I screwed you.
Yeah.
So, but getting back to the family thing, you had a lot of patriotism. I remember coming home my first time with my uniform on, and it was proud. Look at me. And I'm still proud of it. I still see people, guys and gals in the airports and what have you, and I make sure I say hi to them and thank them for their service. It's it doesn't go away.
How would you describe your service in Vietnam?
It was the best of times and the worst of times. We were just kids. I was 19, and we were, in one of the first divisions that were sent over working the rivers, and we really hadn't figured everything out yet. I mean, we didn't even have helicopter support that was our own. The Sea Wolves, they came later while I was there, so we had support.
I don't even know what that is. I'm going to have to look that up.
Sea Wolves was a helicopter battalion.
No, what type of helicopter? Oh, it was a squadron?
Hueys. Yeah, it was just Hueys.
Okay. So that was their squadron name.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about a type of helicopter.
No. That was their squadron name. Losing people. I have suffered with survival guilt my entire life because I saw so many things that happen. It's like hunting out here. It's either a night spot or you're not.
Yep.
And it was absolute boredom for a lot of time, but I mean, when shit would cut loose, it was on. And I, manned a twin 50 caliber machine gun, and I mean, I defoliated the forest. And when I first got there, the jungle came right up to the banks of the river, the rivers, the channels. And that's when they started using Agent Orange, and because we didn't have any kill zones. I mean, and they had these bunkers, these mud and bamboo bunkers that were just like concrete, and you could hear them sliding a friggin' shell down the tube, and that we were on. They had us, and but it was amazing seeing. I forget what type of plane it was, but they had these sprayers that went out, and it would just spray these fields, and like a week later, there was nothing there, and it's just, I was lucky. I've had so many friends that have died after the war from Agent Orange, kidneys, liver problems. Just the camaraderie that you develop. The closeness with your people, but ours was so different because we were there for 13 months. If you were lucky to get that far. And they were constantly bringing people in. It's not like you trained with the same people we did, but they were bringing other people in, and it was a hard time. The country was starting to get, things were happening. My family was great. The families, Santa Cruz was a wonderful community to be from. You could come home and heal, because it was a small town,
Yeah.
and everybody knew everybody. I mean, that's where I learned to drink whiskey, because we didn't have any refrigeration. You could buy a can of beer for 10 cents, but it was warm. So we started stealing booze from the officers' mess. and because you're sitting around, in the ready room just debriefing, and man, you got so much adrenaline going through you, you're hopping. And so I come home, I'm sitting at the airport in Los Angeles catching a flight home, and I'm 20 years old. I got my ribbons on and a dirty old white uniform, and go into the bar, and the guy says, "I can't serve you. You're not 20 years old."
21.
So, yeah, I'm not 21 years old. That's a whole nother story what happened after that. But it's, it was the best of times and the worst of times. I saw so many wonderful and passionate things. I haven't shared this with many people. The worst thing I ever saw or was part of, our commanding officer wanted to go to the Naval Hospital at the foot of Marble Mountain, Marine Corps Naval Hospital. I'm sitting out in the Jeep, and all of a sudden these helicopters, medevac helicopters, are coming in one after another. And they were asking for people for help. So, I jumped in there, and we were taking these litters out, and they're doing the triage. And I mean, guys screaming for their moms, and, just an absolute, I'll never forget the smell of blood.
Yeah.
That was so prolific, and I don't know how long it lasted, but eventually some Marine Corps unit just got pulverized, and which was not uncommon at that time, especially up in the Highlands and what have you, up by the DMZ. And just, that is trauma. I mean, you asked me one time, we were walking when you were down in San Diego in early in the morning, we both heard a helicopter. And you asked me if that ever went away.
Yeah.
And I said, no, it doesn't. It's there. But the friendships, the relationships, I've had people that have gone back to Vietnam, and I have no desire to. I just,
It works for some people, and for other people,
Yeah.
it's not the right fit, I think.
But it's just the sacrifices that people would make for each other. Just that noise of having somebody next to you and hearing him get hit by a friggin' round, that thud, and just different stuff. You know what I'm talking about. It's just, you don't forget that.
So how did you find your transition to be getting out of the military?
I'm still doing it.
Yeah, I would agree. It's probably.
I was very lucky, this is a very good topic. Most of the Vietnam veterans came home and married a woman that didn't know who they were, so only had what they unfortunately had to deal with after that war and the trauma that came with it. I married a sweet woman, your mom, who I had known since she was 14 years old. Went to high school together, dated, and we got married, I don't know, almost a year after I got home. Way too young for both of us, but we did it. And
How old were you when you got married?
I was just turned 21, and Mom, she was either 19 or 20. And she saved my life. She kept me grounded. She knew when something was wrong with me, and it took her 25 years to get me into therapy with the vet center. And I've seen so many of my friends who have suffered with relationships because They had no reference point. You know, they just thought you were nuts. You had a bad temper, or you drank too much, or you did all of the above. You know, mom was she was a godsend to me. She saved my life so many times.
So I get asked this one all the time about my military service. Like, how did I know what I wanted to do when I was so young? Because it's atypical or abnormal, apparently, for people to, I don't know, be drawn to something to the level that I was.
Yeah.
So given the military history on both sides of our family, the service in wartime in both sides of our family, I guess it's a two-part question, because I don't remember exactly when I really got hooked by the idea of joining and becoming a SEAL. But what were your and Mom's thoughts when I decided that that's what I wanted to do? And do you remember exactly when it was that I started talking about it?
You were about 11 or 12 years old. You are a very intense person. And I would have to go with you when you started playing youth sports and telling the coaches, if you can't deal with him, I got it. I mean, you were like 2 years old, and you would stand in the kitchen, and if you didn't get your way, you would hold your breath until you passed out.
But here's the deal. I looked that up on the internet. 7% of kids do that. It's fine.
Okay, well, we had one of the 7%. For us, it was 100%. You know, but I watched you when you were in Pony League or Little League, and you were playing little All-Stars, and you got the flu or something, and you were so frigging dehydrated, but you were not going to miss it. Mom fought me tooth and nail. He's not going. I said, well, you know, I don't know how we're going to stop him, because, you know, this is what he does. And it was just, to make it long story short, after watching you with water polo, and again, probably one of the most intense sports there is, I just had the sense that you'd do it.
Yeah.
You know, with your confidence, your level, and you were a very, very smart young man. You still are. You know, I know you know, getting you through high school without a multiplicity of problems was always a dance. And especially your senior year, you know, because I'm juggling you, wanting you to, you know, enjoy life a little bit, and Mom's out riding me on it, and I'm just trying to balance that mess.
I just didn't care, because I watched my friends devoting the vast majority of their senior year towards like the SATs and all these tests, and
we didn't do any of that.
Well, but you know, in hindsight, it was a terrible strategy, because I obviously didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even know how many people got hurt going through training. It could have been, I could have been on the wrong side of a telephone pole, and it would have been a different outcome. I got very fortunate. I think my focus was directed elsewhere. I just didn't care about what people were doing in high school, so I just ignored it.
Well, yeah, I know. I watched you. The school would call and say, is Andy still around? Why? Well, we haven't seen him in 4 days. And I go, oh, lovely. You know, but you were a hard charger. You were driven. I guess that's probably the best thing to say about you at that time. You were driven, and you knew what you wanted. And I knew the chances of failure were extreme, but, you know, I just had a sense that you would be okay. And Mom wouldn't talk about it much. She just, she loved you unconditionally. Again, coming from a military family, you know, it wasn't a big deal. You know, it's just, and, you know, the sense that we knew you weren't, academia was not your cup of tea.
Definitely likely not going to get a doctorate.
So, well, you know, it was, what are you going to do? You either support him or you're going to fight him on it. And we chose to support you in every way we could.
What were your guys' thoughts when I brought home the waiver that you both had to sign?
Sign it, you know. I had experienced something like that, because one of my best high school friends, he signed up to go into the Air Force, and I was not 17 yet, and I wanted to go with him. And my parents would not sign that waiver for him.
Yep.
And I never forgot that. And, I ended up in the Navy, but
They weren't necessarily against service. They just thought it was too early for you.
oh yeah, they
Okay.
it just was out of the question at that time. So as soon as I turned 18, I was down there at the recruiter saying, because when I first went in the Navy, my goal was to go into the Seabees.
Yep.
I wanted to be a heavy equipment operator.
Yeah, and for people listening, that's CSEA, like B, sting you like a bee. It's a construction battalion.
It's the construction battalion in the Navy, because I'd worked in construction my whole life, 6-7 years in the family, and I wanted to operate heavy construction equipment. The Vietnam War is on. Everybody thought it was a great billet to be in. Not going to have to go fight, even though the Seabees were over there, and they were just getting.
They're the ones building the infrastructure.
They were building. They were having helicopters, seeing a huge helicopter take a bulldozer to the top of the mountain to clear the top of that off and build bunkers for fire control for the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Probably under fire the entire time.
The entire time, yeah. And so I couldn't get in because it was such a heavily on-demand billet that it was full. There was no quota that was left. And so, I went in the Navy with nothing at all and just kind of figured out from there what I was going to do.
Yeah. Now, my earliest recollection that I can remember talking with you briefly about SEAL stuff is we were driving back from Aptos in the tan truck that had the dump truck.
Yeah.
And I don't remember where it came up, but for whatever reason, it seems like from that day forward, there was at least an interest that obviously developed into an insatiable desire to head down that path. But that's my earliest recollection, and it was a random conversation. You had brought it up, I think, in the passing, or not the passing, but the association that you had with them with the boats in Vietnam, and it just...
Yeah, well, it's just it was infectious for you, because once you set your teeth into it, you had your big Navy SEAL flag up there, the literature was everywhere.
You don't have to tell people about the flag. Right?
But, it's the hardest thing for me with all of it was when you left to go to boot camp and we took you up to Hayward and left you at that hotel or whatever it was, motel, with all these other young men.
Yeah.
That kind of rocked me a little bit. That put a lump in my throat, because
shit, that one was easy for me.
Sure, it was easy. But that's when I realized really what was happening.
Yeah, the debacle at MEPS when I first tried to enlist was the difficult one for me.
That was huge. It's just, I'll never forget. You go up there and I come to get you and you're sitting in the lobby and you're in tears. You're holding on to me and you're shaking. You said, "Dad, they won't take me." I'm going, "What the hell are you talking about? They're not going to take you." Remember, I walked you right down. I said, "Where's the commanding officer here?"
Actually, I think you chewed an E5's ass first.
Yeah, somebody. I took whoever I get a hold of first.
In hindsight, the E5 was just like, whatever. This is just another day. I get my ass chewed every day. But
we went to the officer that was in charge there, and I said, "Look, this is this kid's first option, not his last. Look around here." And the thing of it was, which was disqualifying for you.
Yeah, the blood pressure.
Your blood pressure. You've been probably eating McDonald's burgers all night with French fries, and so you skyrocketed. So that officer gave us a waiver. He extended it that we took you to a specialist, do the testing.
And the guy said, "You're totally fine."
He says, "Jesus Christ," he says, "I'd die to have you be this healthy."
You know what was tripping me out about that, right? So I had to get my blood pressure taken 3 more times.
Yeah.
What was the time distance between the two? Was it a couple months?
Yeah, something like that.
Because I remember Gog would come over and she was like, she's like, "You're totally fine." But I knew that I had to have my blood pressure taken 3 times.
Yeah.
And that was the only test I had to do when we went back up there. And let's just say it's really not easy to lower your blood pressure when your life's goal. And I remember, like, I'm not a meditator, but I was like just like trying to relax.
Gotta calm down here. I gotta just slow down.
And then the first one was fine. I'm like, okay, I got it. So dropping me off at the hotel was probably a different experience for you and I.
But it was incredible. It's like when you were going through Buds and you were going through Hell Week. And
you could probably describe this better because I don't really remember seeing you.
So our friend Big Tony was living down there. I knew when Hell Week was. I got there on, I think it was Tuesday night. I was on the beach Wednesday morning. Nobody there. I'm going, Jesus, where the hell is everybody?
Some boring training.
And there was this group of Marine Corps communications specialists doing some of their comm work. And I said, where's this? Aren't they doing Hell Week right now? He said, oh, yeah, man, they're just kicking the crap out of these guys. And I said, well, where are they? He says, well, you just follow the water. You know, the moisture, the trail of water where, they're dripping wet. So I got up on the sand berm and I could see, here's the boats bobbing up and down. And you guys came and you were going in for a medical check. You just had one meal, probably, I guess it was breakfast. First boat comes in and don't see any. Second boat comes in, don't see any. Then
that's great because you didn't even know if I was still in training.
I didn't. And so the third, it was a third or fourth boat that comes in and I saw you. And I went, oh my God! You just looked horrible, and I left. I went to the bar over at the golf course in Coronado. I said, "Give me a double," and so I came back in the afternoon, and there was a McDonald's right there just before you went onto the beach.
Yeah.
I had a rugby shirt or something on. I'm sitting there having a Coke and a hamburger, and the guy says, oh yeah, is your son here going through buds? I said, yeah. And he says, has he seen you yet? And I said, I don't think so. He says, make sure that he sees you. And I said, okay. And so you and I always had this thing, we'd give each other the thumbs up. That was kind of where it was at.
Yeah.
And I get there, and there you guys are down on the tide's out, so you got a lot of beach, a lot of inch and a half worth of water. And here's the boats. They're coming back. Here are these poor bastards, and they're just dying. And you were on, and I knew what boat you were in, and you were on my side, so I could see you. And I don't know if you even remember this, but I got my binoculars. And I seen you have that shit-eating grin you still have, and you gave me the thumbs up, and I almost frigging died. I came back the next day. Oh, I was there every day, and I got to know the instructors. So
I remember seeing you, I think, the next day.
So they had you down in a berm where it was warm, trying to play soccer, and
probably the most boring soccer game
I've
ever
just
seen.
trying to get you warm. I mean, you're in hypothermia in every state of, being chapped and, everything, sandburns and free. Well, anyway, then one of the instructors says, is this one of your boy? Is your boy down here? I said, yeah. And he said, would you like to talk to him? And I said, yeah. So you come up to me and you look at me and I ask how you're doing, and you look me right in the face and how the fuck do you think I'm doing? But what an amazing thing though was Friday when they
secured us.
The instructors saw me and allowed me to come down on the beach and be part of that. I mean, I know the guy's a full captain, dress white uniform, white shoes.
Oh, they take it very serious.
And they walk out in the water. I've had a lot of proud moments in my life, and I still do. I still have them, but I had a knot in my throat that was like the size of a pillow, and they locked you down that night.
Yeah.
And so I picked you up and I took you to Tony's.
And not only did they lock us down, they had people watching you sleep.
Yeah. And so I'll never forget the first time we took you out to dinner afterwards. I think you ordered half of the menu. And I mean, you ate all of it too. It was such wonderful memories. It's just, being able to experience that with someone that you love so much, and as a man knowing what they're going through. I mean, unless you've been through it, you don't know, but you still know this is nasty shit.
Yeah.
And it's watching them doing rock landings and portages and I mean, this is serious stuff. Watching them take the boats out and going out to the waves and the things coming back over and collapsing, seeing guys It's what I use in my rugby. It's just, guys that either got a fractured leg or what have you, and his teammates are carrying him with an oar to get him through it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that it's hard for ordinary people, not ordinary, but I guess
hard for people that don't have those experiences to understand them.
It probably sounds, I don't know what it sounds like, but I knew you'd be all right. Did I worry? Of course I worried, but I knew one. You had focused so much on it, and it was quite an experience as a parent. Yeah,
it's quite an experience as the person.
How the fuck do you think I'm doing?
I do not remember saying that, but I don't doubt that I did. How was it for? So, like I said at the beginning, I'm hopeful to have one day Jaime come on and talk about it from his spouse's perspective.
Yeah.
How was it as a parent having somebody serving post 9/11 and deploying? I mean, because I don't know the exact number of people in the military, but a small percentage of people in the military actually have occupations that will take them to those areas. All service is incredibly honorable, but it is different. So,
I struggled with it. A lot of nasty nightmares came back. A lot of stuff that I'd flash on. Just any phone call after 9 or 10 o'clock at night petrified us.
Yeah.
And I know, again, our common friend Big Tony was with us when Jaime called me like 3:30 in the morning. She was screaming. He's hurt. He's hurt. I didn't know whether it was one of my grandsons or whether it was you.
Yeah.
And
I didn't realize she had called you that.
Yeah,
early.
and I went outside and beat a hole in our fence in the backyard with my fists. Beat a hole right through it. I was outraged. I was scared. I was all of those things. The thing that gave me the greatest pause, though, is I knew you were with the most highly trained, best group of people that you could be with. I knew the level of your professionalism. I had been around you when you had been training and saw that when you went on your first deployment. I talked to your commanding officer. So I had an insight that you were still doing what you needed to do. So that gave me a sense of relief. But when you would be overseas, I know I was down in San Diego one time when you were deploying out.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked you, do you want me to go with you? And I knew you couldn't, because there's just too much emotion going on there. It wasn't.
Yeah, the goodbyes were. It was. It was miserable. That last deployment in 2010, I think I made it maybe a mile down the road, and I had to, I couldn't even drive my car through the tears.
That's the one, because we had Mom in the hospital.
Yeah.
You had been delayed for about 12 days because of a.
She wasn't in the hospital yet.
Okay.
She was home that morning.
Okay.
Because I remember I kissed Julia in her crib.
Yeah.
Because she was still in a crib.
Yeah.
And of course, my thoughts like, okay, will this amazing daughter remember me if something happens? And then I was trying to get out of the house early before the boys got up. But I remember they both came downstairs.
Yeah.
Jaime was holding it together. But Mom was at the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't want you guys to come out of the house. I wanted to be able to. Hard to describe the emotions that are going on there, for sure. But yeah, I made it probably a mile down the road.
Yeah. Well, those are tough times. It's awful hard, especially for me, for my generation, where my peers, my parents and my uncles, they didn't talk about emotions like that. I wanted to talk to you about stuff, and I didn't know how. And then you would be gone, and I would be horrified that I didn't say enough, or I was worried that, that I just hadn't done enough. And once again, Mom would calm me down, but that last deployment was, I can't even begin to imagine what it was like knowing that you're leaving. And there's, would Mom be there when you got home? And even if she was going to be home, what stage of disrepair would she be in?
I wish I had been in a different mental space when I had left, because largely for me, I had already, I would say, mentally and emotionally started separating from what was happening at home,
You had
home,
to. You had
and
to.
was already looking towards what was going to happen. So I don't think I actually did a very good job of being present in those moments before I left, and even allowing them. I just would be a good. I had like the rain gear was already on, shedding water drops off.
You did exactly what you had to do. By then, you were an officer. You had people to take care of. Your level of responsibility was horrible. I'm not horrible. I mean, it was your job.
There was a burden too, but at the same time,
Now, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's got to be hard. It is hard. It's traumatic. It's all those different things. But you had a job to do, and if you didn't do your job, other people were going to get hurt. And that you took a tremendous amount of pride in that. And I struggled with it for a while because I knew what you were going through. I perceived I knew what you were going through. But at the same time, I just, my whole thought was so much with Mom.
Yep.
After going through this for almost 12 years with her, and saying, man, this might be the end of the road. And I was caught in like a ping pong ball in a fishbowl, getting rocked around, and I did the best I could to take care of everybody. And a lot of times, what gets lost in all of it is yourself.
Yeah.
And I had to center myself every once in a while because, we all medicate in different ways, and sometimes I just had to numb myself, and then I'd get angry about that, But yeah, I know it was. I saw you struggle so horribly. You've always been just a very, centered and a very sweet person. And I mean, we all mask it with other things, but I knew who you were, and it's one of the loveliest things that I love is watching you with your family. Is that through all of that, you are still that same wonderful person. All the trauma, dramatic stuff, losing friends, it has been to me just wonderful to see that character has maintained itself, and the professionalism that you do now with everything that you do. My biggest fear is that you wouldn't, because I saw what so many of my peers went through, and are still going through.
Yeah.
And I know there's 65,000 guys on the wall in Washington on the Vietnam Memorial, and that number is probably closer to 300,000 guys that have committed suicide and are still committing suicide today.
I had a pretty powerful experience there last week, actually, or the week before last. I happened to be doing some public speaking in Stafford, Virginia.
Yeah.
Which I think is 30, I don't know, 30, well, however many miles it is, it takes you an inordinate amount of time to drive it, given the traffic on the Beltway. But I always like going to the National Mall anytime that I'm close. I like being there and just seeing it. And I walked over to the Vietnam Memorial, and they were doing, I believe it was called an Angel Flight or an Honor Flight, but they had Korean War veterans. Buses of them.
Oh, wow.
I don't think any of them were walking on their own. I'm sure I didn't stay for hours.
Probably not. Yeah.
But they were paired up with somebody, and they were
walkers, wheelchairs.
Yeah. They were being wheelchaired by the Vietnam War Memorial, and then over towards the Korean War Memorial, and just to see the power that monument has with the names.
It took me. Oh, gosh, how long did it take me to get there? 30 years?
Yeah.
I had a baseball cap that I had while I was there, and when I got on the plane to go home, I wrote inside on the bill, I will never forget. I took that hat and a bunch of letters that I had saved and left them there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were still there was things that were left there even
Yeah.
a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago when I was there.
Because the panels are by time periods. It's not alphabetical or anything. So you can go to the directory and then you see these names that just jump out at you.
Yeah.
You know, and you touch the stone and it's cold. And it's it's so riveting. It's just because for so many of us, we never got to say goodbye. We never did. And it's just, you came home. I mean, in less than 24 hours, I was getting shot at. The base I was at had just been mortared. And in 24 hours, I'm in the international airport in Los Angeles.
Oh, I know the feeling.
And yeah, I know what I'm saying. And they won't serve me a damn drink. You know? The thing about that I started to tear that place apart. They called security on me. Here the rent-a-cops show up. Again, my luck. This old guy comes over. I got my ribbons on and stuff. He says, "You got your order, sailor?" He says, "What?" I told him what's going on. He says, "Go sit over there, and I don't want to hear a word out of you." He came back to me about a half an hour later. He says, "Here's the deal. You can drink all night. You're going to sit in that corner over there by yourself, and you're not supposed to leave here." Oh, I woke up on the pool table in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got on on a plane and went home. But here's another guy that just, could have busted my butt, turned me into shore patrol or anything, but he read my orders and he says, go sit over there.
Yeah. No, it's crazy for me watching the connection between the Korean War veterans.
Yeah, and I've never seen that.
And the Vietnam War, because obviously they're separated by a substantial period of time.
Yeah.
I guess it's possible that somebody could have served in Korea and Vietnam.
There was.
Although I'm going to say it's probably unlikely that any of those people there.
Woody lived across the street from. He was an E9 master, biggest sergeant there is in the Marine Corps. Yeah.
But it was just crazy, and it was. The wall is so interesting.
Yeah, the design is.
Well, the design, but also just the fact that it's just names. Yeah. There's no dates.
Yep.
I was listening to one of the docents talk about how you find somebody, vertically and horizontally. I'm not going to say it's like an Excel spreadsheet because that's a fucking terrible example. But it's you use one column and another one. But on the way up there, for whatever reason, I couldn't get my phone to connect with the radio in the car. So I was listening to the radio, which I never do. And it was an hour plus of I was kind of flipping back and forth between the news. And it was just babble, 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 babble. And it was, so leading up there to getting to the wall, I was listening to people like, this is who I am, and this is what I care about, and this is what you think, and then let's fry this person. And no judgment on either side of the argument. That's just what I happened to be listening to on the way up there. And then I stood in front of one of the panels in the wall, and I'm 6 feet tall, and that thing was well over my head. And I realized that the only information on that thing is first and last name.
Shit.
No description of what their beliefs were, their religion, ethnicity. Everything that was being yelled about on the radio is absent at that memorial.
Yes. For a reason.
And it doesn't talk about the loved ones that they left behind and the opportunities that people take for granted and I just stood there and it rocked me, and it just realized how lucky I was and same for you. I mean, like, a lot of this stuff is, you can be really good at your job and you can have a bad day, right? You go to Vegas and you roll dice long enough, you're going to roll a 7.
Yep.
You give yourself a long enough timeline, the outcome, I think, is preordained. But to just sit there and realize how lucky I was, and to see the difference between a wall of names that are just that, and I consider those people to be the stitches that hold this country together.
They are the fabric of everything.
And then the national narrative of just, look at me. It's just like, God, we're lost.
Well, that's a very accurate way to put it. I experienced something that was incredible as well. As went to the World's Rugby Cup in 2007 in France, and Mom and I and Big Tony, we went to Normandy.
Oof. I got to get there one of these days.
And I walked up. They have a wonderful museum. You're downstairs, and then you come up, and there's this pool of water that just goes out as far as you can see. You step up there, and you see that cemetery, and you walk around, and the thing that impressed me so much, and especially in the narrative we're having today of the differences of who we are, and races and cultures coming in and whatever, but the amount of veterans there that had died that were Jewish, Muslim,
fill in the blank. I mean, it's everything.
Yeah, and it was overwhelming to me to see how it just floored me. I just stood there and it was in absolute tears, and it just rocked me. And just seeing that with, as you said, the fabric, and it's a multi-colored fabric. It's not just American white. It's brown, it's blue, it's green, it's all these different Turkish people and what have you. That it's like Debbie, my wife now. Her dad was on the first fucking landing craft with the Canadians on the far beach. They didn't get as bad as the rest, but he was there then, worked in the underground as a French interpreter. I mean, it's just the stories that are out there that need to be shared but aren't,
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, you don't want to talk about it. I can remember not long after I got home from the war, got married, and Mom graciously said, "Why don't you go back to college? You want to coach and teach." And I would be on college campuses, first Cabrillo, then San Diego State. And I could just tell, we call it the stare. I don't know if your generation calls it the same thing.
1,000-yard stare?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew who the veterans were, and so we started teaming up a little bit, and we talked intimately with each other about, one, how you doing, but do we get involved in this movement that's going on, or how do we not,
Well, the reception that your generation received, I think, is vastly different than the reception that my generation of veterans has and is currently still receiving.
The thing was, I went all the way through college, and I got a teaching job in Australia. Once again, Mom and I are packing up and heading out. And about a week before is when they released the prisoner of war. And they're showing them landing in the Philippines or someplace, and they're talking when they were captured and what have you. And I mean, I'd been away from that war. This was like 1971, 72.
You're talking about the people from the Hanoi Hilton?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're just letting these people out. I was so embarrassed. I mean, I got over it, but I realized, hey, it's just that's what happens. But God, I felt so bad that these guys, I mean, like John McCain. I disagreed a lot with what John McCain, but that man was my hero.
Mm-hmm.
He had a trait that we have lost, the ability to compromise and listen and talk. John Kerry, who was a swift boat captain. Mm-hmm. They were on two opposite ends of this cycle, but they got together and created the framework that got the relations between our country and Vietnam again, and got many of the stuff. I mean, I just seeing people like that released after years, can't walk, weigh 110 pounds. Yeah. It doesn't go away. But, it gives us a reference, respect it. It's people still ask me, how you doing? I said, well, nobody's shooting at me, so I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
And, and I say that, and I sometimes can't believe I still say that.
Yeah.
But it's just,
What advice would you give to parents who have kids I don't know, anywhere from how old I was when I was first talking about it, who have show interest, who potentially want to join the military or have kids who are serving now. Looking back, I mean, you were on the outside of me serving for 17 years.
Yeah.
Any advice to parents just starting that journey, or maybe they're midway through or struggling with it?
Well, listen to your children. I'll give you just a little slice of something that goes on with me right now. I coach collegiate rugby with women, and I've steered a couple of them towards ROTC.
Mm-hmm.
They got their education paid for. They're just excited. It's not for everyone, but I always tell young people, why not consider the military? I think it's a great way. We talk about a rite of passage again.
Mm-hmm.
Do your work, raise your kids right like you're doing, like Casey's doing. They'll be okay. Are they going to go in harm's way? Well, put a little sand in your shorts. It's okay. I think one of the biggest things that we can do with our children is get them out of their comfort zone. Get them in situations where, they'll know you're there. I mean, you always make sure your kids know that you're there for them. It's like the time you came home from baseball, and I told you, don't let that SOB yell, and we went right back there and took care of business.
Oh, I remember that day too.
But I mean, those kind of things. The military is a wonderful place. The education you can get, the growing up you can do, learning to work as a team. Today getting your college paid for. I mean,
there's a lot of benefits.
An opportunity, especially if you're going to college already, you can go in as an officer. A couple of my gals want to go into medicine.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't believe the opportunities that the armed forces laid out to them. They were happy to have that. Jesus is exactly who we're looking for. Just be honest with your kids. Make sure that they know that you support them and love them. You do that, everything's going to be okay. It's a crapshoot anyway. I mean, it's just you just always make sure your kids know you love them and that you're there for them. It's just the military isn't for everyone either. It's some people that's not where they should be. I think that there should be mandatory military or national service for at least 3 years. Get them away from home, get them grown up, teach them job skills, teach them how to work with other people, teach them what the rest of the world looks like.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we're so sourly missing that we need. It's just, there's so many things that are going on that we don't have answers to, but that to me is not one that I think the answer is there.
I think the answer to that one is much simpler than people want to make it out to be.
Well, you have people today making decisions regarding the military and have never served.
That's I don't really think a drastic departure from overall history though either.
Probably right, but let's change it. Let's make it so they know. I think John McCain, and you look at his advocacy for the military his entire time. John Kerry's, the gentleman from Hawaii who almost lost his arm, George Bush Sr. I mean, you look how they handled those situations compared to some of these other public servants that don't.
Yeah.
You're still gonna, you're gonna still have your dickheads, but I mean, it's like going to the sock drawer. Sometimes they don't all mix.
Perfect ending.
Yeah.
All right. That's it for this week. Thank you again to BioWave for supporting the Cleared Hot podcast. Like I said in the beginning, if you're interested in looking at an opioid-free method of getting pain-free, check out biowave.com. VA recognized, VA prescribed, FDA cleared, and made in America. Effectively and safely blocks pain at the source with opioids. Visit biowave.com. What else? How else can you support the podcast? Well, here's the deal. If you don't want to, you absolutely don't have to. If you want to just take the time to listen to the podcast and you want to enjoy it or provide feedback, you know what? I'm totally happy with that. If you want to take it a step further, you can always go to clearedhotpodcast.com. There, what would I call it? I guess merchandise? I don't know. T-shirts and some other fancy, flavorful things, even though there's nothing there that's should be eaten. And check it out. I take all the money from the sales that we make and I put it back into the podcast, whether it's improving the gear that I have or flying around to see people and sit down and have conversations. If you choose to go that route, awesome. If not, you just want to listen, also equally as awesome. And what else is there? I think that's about it. Thank you for the reviews on iTunes. Thank you for the suggestions. Thank you for all of the emails. Please keep them coming. And that is it. Until next week.